do you do if... Hello, friends, and welcome to Creative by Konstantin podcast. I am thrilled to introduce to you my dear friend and esteemed colleague and inaugural guest of the podcast, Yaron Kohlberg, pianist, internationally renowned star, pedagogue, and a visionary behind now the Cleveland Piano and Cleveland International Piano Competition. And before we begin, click like and subscribe the bell button around the screen so that you can get all the notifications from our podcasts as we keep providing you with further amazing guests. Yaron, thank you so much for your time. How are you, my friend?
Okay, it's going well. What about you? It's great to see you.
Good. It's great to see you too.
Congratulations for your new podcast.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled. I couldn't have wished for a better guest. And I'm just thrilled that we're finally getting to catch up in the cyberspace on this virtual new platform.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I'm super happy to be here.
Thank you. Tell me, how are you adapting? How has the quarantine been for you since it began?
Well, the quarantine has been quite an interesting experience. I think that as for many musicians, well, I mean, my personal performances were all canceled. I was supposed to play at the Vatican for the Pope next week, and so concert tours got canceled. But gladly, of course, I have a position as the president of Piano Cleveland, and this is keeping us very busy all the time, kind of trying to adjust to the situation and see what we can do. So it has been, quite an interesting experience, but a lot of it gives you time to sort of be creative and work on things and invest in relationships that you do not have the time to do. So that's a good thing, at least.
Absolutely. The only way to survive is to look for the upside, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the right, healthy attitude. And we will get to all the amazing initiatives of Cleveland Piano Competition in a second.
Piano Cleveland is the name of the organization.
Yes.
Is Piano Cleveland, yeah.
Yes, Piano Cleveland. So as a Cleveland Piano Competition prize winner, I just have this ingrained in my tongue. But I wanted to kind of go back to the beginning in a very simple way and ask you, what inspired you to become a pianist? Because I know your father is a professor of your religious science. Is it correct?
Islamic studies. So, yeah, I mean, my father is a professor of Islamic studies. My mother was actually studied the violin and Juilliard with Dorothy DeLay. And she was the concertmaster of Jerusalem Symphony Orchestra for many years. And my father is also an amateur pianist who, in his youth played for Leonard Bernstein and got great, feedback from him. But he just didn't really enjoy being in front of an audience and decided not to take it as a career, although he certainly could have. But my parents played together. This is how they met, actually. When my father replaced my mother's pianist who became sick in the last moment. And then that's how they got together. So, so I grew up with a lot of music in the house. So that was.
Oh, that's great. So, I mean, that actually how they got together.
Yeah. That's how they started playing together, and that's how they, some other stuff happened. And and then they ended up getting married.
Well, those are the benefits of creative endeavors, right?
Absolutely, very creative, indeed.
But you have such a most interesting and unusual path on a musical sort of journey, because you have also acquired 6 languages. How did that happen?
Well, one by one. I think that, languages is kind of being like a passion of mine. So I think as a child in Israel, everybody speaks English, or at least most people. And also we lived, when I was a child, we lived 2 years, one in England and one in America, actually, when I was 3 years old. So I had like a background of English. I lived in Princeton, New Jersey when my father was on sabbatical Yeah, that was
It's
a very long
amazing.
time ago. And also I studied French as a third language as a child. And then in the last 10 years after I left Israel, and I lived in China for 3.5 years. I lived in Germany for 4 years. So this is where I studied these two languages. And Spanish, I just got to study during my traveling, and because I performed a lot in Spain and South America. And once you have the background of French and English, so Spanish is relatively, it's kind of easier to pick up. So yeah, and I'm trying to study Danish and Russian now, but in the quarantine time, but
This is incredible. I mean, you already speak 6, and if you, which I know you will accomplish the other 2, it'll be 8. But you know, look,
yeah.
just for the fairness of things, most of our colleagues travel and perform all over the world, but very few of them speak so many languages as fluently as you do. So was this something that you felt, I mean, you knew it was going to be useful, or it's just passion and basically a hobby and something you love doing without thinking, oh, but I might be teaching a master class on Chinese television and Mandarin, and you know.
So I would say it's a combination, probably. Spanish, I think I still did more out of like a passion for languages. And Chinese was also a passion for languages, but I also thought, you know, when I was kind of living in China at the beginning, I thought it would be for a few months. It ended up being for longer. I just, you know, you can understand the culture much better if you speak the language, and it's a very useful language to know because 20% of the world speaks it. And yeah, so I think it was kind of a combination, and specifically the Chinese was a combination between the passion and also professional reasons.
I mean, it's amazing. I've seen your master classes in Chinese, and I mean, you sound fluent, but it's a very different language from all the others because it's phonetic. Am I right? I mean, so was that a challenge for you or not, to learn how to kind of phonate your voice in the way that changes the meaning of the words? Because you're dealing with very sophisticated language in teaching the piano at a level that you do. It's not sort of where's the bathroom kind of Chinese.
Well, Chinese specifically, I invested a lot of time. Chinese doesn't come easy at all, particularly not for somebody, again, because of, as you said, all these tones and everything. I spent hours and hours every day for at least 2 years, and basically all my period in China, I kind of spent a lot of time studying and perfecting my Chinese as much as I could. Of course, it's not perfect, but it's to an extent that I could, and I also taught myself all the terms of like all the musical terms, and so I'm able to because in China, I did a lot of concerts and master classes there, and I noticed that when you communicate with the audience, and specifically in master classes, when you can communicate in Chinese, you know, there are certain cities that nobody speaks English, and it's just very practical.
I know, having taught in China myself, I mean, I know how terrifying and kind of blindfolding it can be when you really can't communicate directly. And yours are so interactive, but I can just tell, though I'm reading subtitles in English, but I can tell that, I mean, the things you're talking about are very fine and refined things. So it's not, it's just very extraordinary, I think.
Thank you very much.
What would you suggest to a musician who is thinking about embarking on a couple of years of living abroad and in different cultures such as China? Because I know a lot of people are kind of secretly dreaming about it, but it is a big step to just pack up your life and off you go to Asia or Africa or anywhere else in the world, really, Australia. A completely new culture, new world, new language. How do you accomplish that?
Well, I can ask you the same question because you went through it also. So I think this is, first of all, I think a lot of it depends on it's much harder to do once you're settled down with a family, when you're married or have children. So of course, this is a little bit harder to do because there are a lot of, you have to think about your partner, about your children. When you're like single, as I was at the time, that was in a way relatively, you know, kind of experimental. And at this period of time, I mean, I was involved in a piano duo Amal, that we were playing all over the world. And it didn't really matter where I where was our base, because we were anywhere on the world. So it was so between the concerts, you know, I was always fascinated by the Chinese culture, and I had some concerts booked there, and I said, okay, why don't I use the opportunity and just go? So for your question, how to adjust to that, or well, first of all, you need to have a certain state of mind and understand that probably you don't understand anything. Like, meaning not only in terms of the language, but like the cultures are very, very different from each other. And in every place they have their own set of values, and the culture is going a specific way, and the society is a specific way. And honestly, if I'm very honest, like even moving to America, which is like the greatest countries in the West, one of the leading countries in the world, I also had to adjust to the culture. And so as you know, as an Israeli who lived maybe in Germany and China and Israel before, and England, so living in America is also something different. So it always takes time, and you always have to want to learn, and to discover new aspects of yourself, I guess.
But I guess the bottom line of what you're saying is that the curiosity, the curiosity in the new culture is the doorway. Is what you learn by being there, as opposed to what you bring with you and kind of reestablish what you already know.
Yes, it's a lot of curiosity, sometimes stupidity, and just like, going for it, like, woo, let's just go for it. So of course, as I'm slowly getting a little bit older, these changes will become less and less. But I think that, when I was in my 20s, like early 30s, and now I moved to America, of course, for this wonderful position. So this was a transition. When I moved to China, it wasn't for any particular reason. I mean, I had some concerts there. I had 2 big concert tours there, but I didn't have a job waiting for me or anything.
That's
so
just amazing.
Just like,
you just sort of stayed.
Yeah, I just went for 1 semester in university for Chinese, and I ended up staying for 3.5 years. So.
And you didn't you have your competition there, Yaron Kohlberg competition?
Yeah, they tried to do all sort of, yeah, there were 2 Yaron competitions that they wanted to do, and
that's amazing. I saw you. What did it feel like to have your giant poster, beautifully photographed, displayed at the largest metro station in Beijing?
Yeah. That was in Shanghai, I think. It's it's strange. After a while, again, I don't want it to sound arrogant or anything like that, but I mean, first of all, you get a little bit used to it, and also you understand that it's a game, and particularly in China, you feel that sometimes it's again, they like making things really like look big, and like this is the way they advertise. And I think that some Chinese people do not really differentiate between one white guy and another. So that's also a part of it. Some, of course, not everybody, but those who are less international or less kind of used to or less in communication with the people in the West, they may see it as like still some kind of white idol kind of thing. So I think at some point at the beginning, when the first time I performed in China, I was with my piano duo, and we were like totally struck by these huge posters. And after a while, it's nice, it's flattering, but nothing more.
Good. Well, I mean, it looks terrific, and it's part of the experience. And I think you have such a good attitude about it. But tell me, so between China and Cleveland, did you live anywhere else, or was it a direct move?
It was a direct move.
And how was that? I mean, how was that? I mean, I know Cleveland, and I love it. I've been coming to Cleveland, in fact, since 2001, which is when I first came to the competition, and I ended up, in the semifinals, but I fell in love with the city and the people, and then I returned, and it's beautiful, but it's a very particular part of the country. I mean, it's a slower, sort of very traditional Americana, if you will, lifestyle. How did that feel moving from futuristic, skyscraper China?
Well, I can just tell you it was a very, very big, a huge, a huge change. And it honestly took me at least the year to sort of realize, especially that I was entering a new position. Back then it was president and CEO. Now kind of by my position, my title is president. So I was doing a lot of things for the first time in a new culture. As for your description of Cleveland, I think it's, you know, Cleveland, by the way, loves you, and you've been back here and involved with our organization also. I think that Cleveland is very multi-faceted. Is that how you say? Like there's many faces to Cleveland, and there is like this, whatever you say, Americana, but also Cleveland is a very cultural place, and there's a lot of art. The art scene is huge here. There are a lot of musicians. There's a wonderful museum, like one of the world's greatest orchestras. You know, the Cleveland Clinic, one of the best hospitals in the country. So there is, I mean, so it is still coming to like a cultural place in the West. So maybe Cleveland's not New York in what it has to offer, but there's still a lot that Cleveland can offer. But still, like, of course, the differences between Cleveland and Shanghai, which was the city I was living before that, was quite enormous. And in China also, like by the way of doing business and by the way you communicate with people, it was just like, and you know, I came here alone. It was quite challenging, I have to say.
Yeah,
it wasn't easy at all.
You're negotiating it so beautifully, and of course, what I didn't by any stretch of imagination meant to say that Cleveland is sort of too quiet, because Cleveland, as you said, has some of the best, one of the world's best orchestras, one of the world's best museum, the largest Fabergé egg collection outside of Russia. Actually, not egg, but jewelry. It's extraordinary. And the clinic and research facilities. So it's a major important city, but it is, you know, like many American great cities, has a lot of suburban element to it. So you don't drive to places. You don't just take an elevator down and you're like surrounded by 5 million people. So it's one of those things. But then when you were in Shanghai, I presume you lived in an apartment.
I did, yeah. So
did you have a grand piano down in your apartment in Shanghai?
Yeah, I had a piano there. I brought to this kind of old Shanghainese house. Because there was there's a neighborhood called the French Concession, which is beautiful part in Shanghai. So I kind of insisted living there, although kind of the houses are kind of a little bit run down in this area. It's not like these new buildings. It's kind of older buildings, but it has so much character and style. Yeah, but the piano caught like a very significant part of my living room. So,
did you have the same piano?
No, I had a different piano. This piano I got it here in Cleveland.
Because I was gonna say, you didn't just bring the piano all the way across from China.
No.
Well, so tell me, how did your position in Cleveland come about? Because you are an international star, you're performing all over the world. Was it something on your radar? I mean, did you ever think, say 2 years before you became president and CEO of Cleveland Piano, did you think it was going to happen, or imagine this? Was it in the plan?
Well, first of all, I mean, thank you so much. I don't know if I deserve the superlatives that you're saying, but it's very kind of you. And well, I think that no, it's certainly not something that I planned. But throughout the, you know, in the path that I took, there's been a lot of learning, and I did get to learn a lot about how the classical music business is also like functioning. I mean, through my personal performances, but also through, you know, opening a company in China and working there. And like, it taught me a lot about the kind of business aspects that I think are sometimes, you know, us artists, we grew up in our bubble of, you know, of music, and we're not always super connected to what's happening besides our art. And I think that while working with my duo partner, with Bshara, Duo Amal, and then like later in China, I learned a lot of about the music business, and that gave me a good background to you know, somehow to prepare me for this position in Cleveland. But still, I mean, this has been also like a very, very serious learning curve for me. So, because I came without experience in kind of running an organization at all. And I'm very grateful to them for, you know, that they saw maybe something, you know, despite the fact they knew that I was not very experienced in that. But it's certainly not something I planned. I just came to be on the jury of the youth competition in 2018. They invited me, the previous president CEO, Pierre van der Westhuizen, invited me. And I came here, and then my dear friend and our board chair, Zita Blau, I stayed with her in the first few days when I was adjusting to the jet lag, and she said, you know, that Pierre left, and we just sharing with me, and we're looking for a new president CEO, and so far we haven't found anybody in the last few months. And then I said, okay, that sounds kind of interesting. And then the same night I was texting her like at midnight. I said, you know, I'm interested in the job. And she was like, she thought I was joking, because she of course knew me from my previous performances here and as a winner of the competition here. And and then I was invited for an interview, and it all happened at the same time I was on the jury. So it was a very strange. So it was I couldn't believe that it was happening.
Sounds like a Hollywood story. I love it.
Yeah, it was like you never. Yeah, I could never expect that, and I felt I was in such a high, you know, for a month after that. It was like a dream come true. I didn't believe that it's actually happening.
And it's so wonderful because it's almost like a new dream, isn't it? It's not something you sort of grew up thinking about. So it really has a double impact.
Exactly, and especially that, you know, Cleveland had like the Cleveland International Piano Competition had a very important, a significant part in my development, as I'm sure you can also say that it was a very important moment for you in your personal, in your development, your career. So that was the same for me, you know, just winning this big prize here, it, you know, gave me a lot of opportunities later on, and not to mention a work visa in China that you could only get by being a winner of several competitions on the website of the Chinese government. I got like the best work visa there and stuff like that. So, and of course, performance opportunities and etc. And so it was very special, you know, to be able to kind of contribute back or just see things from another side, you know.
Well, it's almost like a full circle. I mean, there's sort of a beautiful harmony to it.
I always like joking that it's like, you know, I started like as a contestant, and then like I went to perform for them and then be on the jury, and now I'm president. Maybe my next stage is going to be, I don't know, the piano tuner in the competition. I don't know what, I don't know what's left. We'll see.
Well, you are the piano competition, so there you have it. You embody it all now. But speaking of competitions, you've done a whole number of them, and you've won so many prestigious prizes. What was your experience like?
Well, I'm sure that, yeah, this is something that you also have a lot of experience with. I know that you do. And I can tell you that the experience in piano, my experience in piano competitions has been mixed. Has been a mixed bag. It wasn't, there were a lot of good things about it. And, you know, I developed a lot thanks to them. I had good experiences and bad experiences. Not mentioning names. Now they're all colleagues. And I can tell you that certain competitions gave you a better feeling than others. Certain competitions, of course, the one you end up winning prizes on, automatically it gives you some kind of nice feeling. But there are also competitions that, for example, I participated in a competition called Top of the World in Norway. And I end up winning third prize there in 2011. But the 2 years before, I was there in the semifinals, and I just like probably like kind of, from what I understood, like a last moment change or something. I didn't make it to the finals, and I can still tell you it was one of the best experiences I ever had in a piano competition, just because of the you know, the way they treated us and the kind of the feeling that there was between the contestants. There was something so friendly. I made friends for life there, and this is really something. And of course, Cleveland, when I was here, like the you know, how the all the public and the audience and the people involved, you know, were so welcoming. So this is really something I took with me. There are also other competitions, whether I won them or not, that you basically come, you perform, and nobody even knows you're there, and you get, or if you don't pass, so you're upset, and if you do pass, so somehow you're still stressed. And yeah, I could talk a lot about it, about experience in competitions. So what I can just say is that bringing all these different experiences, now being a leader, you know, the very, very important thing is to make sure that the pianists will have the best experience they can while they attend this competition, and they will see it as a very, very memorable event in their career, and that they will feel appreciated by the effort they've done and by all the work they're doing. We know how hard it is. We know it's not even prizes there. It's not the best always who wins. There's not like really something as best in music. I mean, it's so many great people are applying to these competitions, and some don't get in. And you know, even now in the selection process we had for the 2020 competition, which ends up being in 2021, you know, we left out some incredible pianists, and like, you know, we did the process, you know, in a very democratic way, and between the jury, you don't always agree, and you just say, you know, we must make some kind of selection. It's cruel, but at the least we want to do it to really give everybody a feeling that, you know, they should just continue and doing, you know, what they do.
Look, I mean, that is why I feel that for a major piano competition, let's face Cleveland Piano Competition is one of the top, I don't know, 5 competitions that matter today. And to have someone like yourself, a steward of the competition, is invaluable, because it ensures that the environment is really geared towards what you were talking about, the fraternity of pianists, the fellowship of musicianship, versus just, you know, an Olympic game. Because unfortunately, while our craft is of Olympic stature and demands, performing arts can never be judged the same way as sports, because it is not the fastest or the strongest that ought to win, right? Yeah. So that's the conundrum of it, is that it's too subjective. It's not objective in that sense that, say, Olympics are.
Absolutely. So the thing is that for some of the public, I mean, they do enjoy the competition aspect of it, which is great. I mean, that's nice. However, we must always remember and remind everybody that it's not absolute in music. It's not like in sports that the first one who crosses the line is the winner. You know, it's very subjective, and it depends who the jury is, and depends on so many, you know, the repertoire, and there's so many things it can depend on. And but still, it's a great opportunity and great experience for young pianists to participate in something like this. So we just want to continue and just make sure that people know that there are a lot of great people out there, and we're doing the best for all of them. Not all of them are going to end up being winners, but we are still hoping that they will have some kind of you know, they will gain something for their life and for their career from this experience.
Yeah. Look, I want you to tell me more about what you're doing with virtual Ozo competition, because I know that, I mean, all the competitions and festivals of the world are faced with having to close the physical doors, and you guys rescheduled the main competition for 2021, which is of course the only path forward. But then you created something so uniquely special, so fast. Tell me, how did it happen, and how were you able to put it together so fast?
Well, I think that the reason how we managed to put it together so fast, this is because we have an incredible team at Piano Cleveland. This was what made it happen. I mean, we have I can even mention by names Marissa, Crystal, Emily, Leslie, and Nicole, who are working so diligently in our office, and they're just an incredible team. And now I'm functioning kind of more as the artistic. I'm kind of bringing the artistic ideas and the kind of donor relations, and but they are doing a lot of this kind of work of actually making that happen. These ideas happen. So, and of course, with the great support of our board of directors and the donors and sponsors that we have. So when we have such a good team who's working so efficiently. So when we had this idea, so first of all, we had the idea of something called the quarantine concert. So whenever we went on a lockdown, we saw that was happening, that we're going to have to cancel. all the process of announcing the postponement of the competition went very, very fast, thanks to them. And it was a lot of work, and everybody really went on top of that. And then we came up with an idea that came up in our office of this weekly series called the Quarantine Concerts to raise money for musicians. And this concept of like this weekly concert that we had, and we managed to raise almost $20,000 in several concerts.
Incredible.
Yeah. So I think there's a noise in the background. So there's
a siren. There's a
siren.
Yeah.
So the fact that that was so successful made us want to see what we can do really internationally in order to support the community of musicians, specifically of pianists, and see whether we can raise money for them. And then we have very, very good friends at the Steinway Gallery Cleveland, Piano Gallery Cleveland, Ted Good and Catherine Brewport, who are also on our board. And they managed to create a connection with Ron Losby, the CEO of Steinway. And later on, we just continued the conversation with them, and we managed to put this project together with their help.
That's perfect. And you will have an absolutely global piano competition where pianists will go into their local Steinway dealership to record, correct?
Yeah, so originally we were looking at different locations in the world. Due to time, and also because of we wanted to provide the same technical, let's say like the same conditions for everybody, we stayed with 5 locations. Hopefully in the future we can do it more. So we stayed with Cleveland, New York, Hamburg, London, and Beijing. We know that many people are not going to be able to travel. However, we hope that that some people, for example, the people in most parts of America would be able to travel to either Cleveland or New York, and that people in Great Britain would be able to come to London, and that people who live in certain parts of Europe are able to come to Hamburg. And in Beijing, again, it depends on the lockdown, but there are plenty of pianists and great music institutions in Beijing. So we're not covering everything, but we're covering what we could.
A large swath of the world.
Yes.
And then once the contestants are in the competition, then it will happen in a virtual way.
Yes, so this is why it's called virtuoso. Like it's a combination of the word virtual and the word virtuoso. So virtuoso together.
I love it.
That we were kind of
I know, so like
brainstorming
right?
for a really long time about that. Yeah. So basically it's all virtual. I mean, this is what we have right now. I mean, there are no live performances, but we want to create the best experience for the contestants and for our audiences who are going to view it online.
And the most important thing, that everybody is going to essentially be a winner in a sense that everyone who is admitted into the competition will end up receiving an award that has a dollar amount to it.
So the whole idea here is we do it actually for artist relief. This is the official title, like global virtual competition for artist relief. Mm-hmm. And we know that so many pianists these days are, they have their concert canceled. Some of them depend only on this kind of income from these concerts. So we're going to spread out the prizes between all the contestants. So everybody's going to get $1,000, it's going to come from donations and from our support. And they may end up even getting more depending on like online donations. And then finalists receive $2,000, and the 3 winners will receive $2,500. So it's not the huge prizes of our big competition, the $75,000 mix and first prize, but it's certainly something that we can offer a relief for 30 pianists. So that's, I think, pretty nice.
It is so needed right now. It just sounds so brilliant and so sort of like, wow, how come no one else has thought about it? Because it's the right thing at the right time. And then when people can donate more in a real time as the performers play, I mean, how do you do the fundraising end of it? So when the competition will be taking place, will the donating technology be able to receive funds as the performances occur, or is it later, or can people text you money?
Yeah, so we're still, of course, working on the technology aspect of it. But yes, basically, people are going to be able to donate directly to the musicians as the performances are happening. They're also able to donate before and after. And also, the performances are going to be broadcast 3 times. One in Beijing time, one in London time, and one in New York time, New York, Cleveland time. So people can sort of adjust and listen to the performances whenever convenient for them.
So in many ways, I'm just curious from what you're saying. So could people donate to both the organization at large, say that you then disperse the funds to the pianists equally, or can they single out whoever they personally like in an effect that makes it sort of like an audience favored essentially price, or at least for those who are giving, it makes them give to their favorite?
Yeah, so they can do it either way. I mean, they can donate to our contestant fund in general, or to our Piano Cleveland's annual fund to support, what we're doing, which of course, this is also very, very necessary. Or they can donate directly to their favorite contestant. They can say, I love X's playing, and this is the guy I want to support. By the way, we're of course going to encourage the contestants to tell their friends to listen, and this is how their friends can support the person that they're supporting and all that. So there's several ways to support this project.
This is so brilliant. And this is a perfect example of marriage of art, music, and technology put to the best possible use. So you are being truly very techie, as it were, but at the same time, it is used for such good and at such right time. Where do you personally stand with tech? I mean, are you a techie, you love it, or you just use it because you have to?
You mean me in person, or in
the
organization?
You personally.
Yeah, no, I'm very far from techie. But we have to use it, of course. Like it's I mean, there are great tools nowadays, and of course, like if we can take advantage of them, that's in such a case, it's super important and super useful.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a bit of a techie, so I feel like there's poetic beauty in it, that something that people don't associate with necessarily, essentially close to, say, I don't know, performing arts or a live performance in the moment, something as transactional as swiping a card or punching in a number, can actually be symbiotic in such a wonderful way, in real time. I think it's truly the 21st century experience.
Yeah, absolutely. That's quite amazing. And you just think about this, the coronavirus situation, and what would have happened if we didn't have
this,
Zoom, like any of that. I mean,
look at us now.
It's actually proving itself.
Now, another thing that begs a question is, do you see that the virtuoso competition will live on and have a path forward beyond this pandemic-ridden times?
Well, I mean, first of all, let us get through this one. But we will see how it goes. I have no doubt that certain elements are going to stay, whether in one way or another, whether it's in a piano competition or in another project. It does not replace, I mean, the virtual world does not replace live music. This is something that we do because we have to adjust, but still going to a live performance and our major event, the Kreative International Piano Competition happening in 2021. I mean, we are going on with that as people, as we've been used to do in the last many, many years. But yes, certainly certain components of this, especially depending on how the situation with the coronavirus is going to develop, certain components we're certainly going to consider for future use in other projects, or maybe in the same project moving forward.
Oh, look, I mean, it's so remarkable, and just to reiterate the point you made, I myself don't think that virtual existence can replace real life, and virtual performances somehow, infringe on live performances. I think it only makes people hungrier for real life performances. It makes us remember what it feels like to actually be in the room where the music is made.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll just turn the sun is here.
Absolutely, I can tell. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the sun was here, so I just had to close it. Yeah.
So now coming, I have so many questions I want to ask you, and I want to take up too much of your time. So seems to be pertinent in the moment. As a multiple award winner and somebody who's now in charge of one of the more important competitions in the world, what do you think is the best way to think about competitions for prospective contestant?
I think that the best way to approach a competition is as a learning experience. One should never go to a competition thinking that you're going to win a prize, because there are very, very good chances that you're going to get disappointed. So it's always good to come knowing that this is a learning experience, that this is an opportunity, and not only an opportunity by winning a prize, but also you don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know who your colleagues are going to be. You don't know what friendships you're going to make. You have to come open. You have to come friendly. Of course, you have to come prepared, but to present your best, to make sure that you have performed the best that you could at this moment, that you chose the right repertoire for yourself. And if you won a prize, and great. And if not, so still, also the preparation process is also helping us become better musicians and better pianists, and being exposed to, because all the people attending international competitions of the caliber of the Creative International Piano Competition, all the candidates are absolute top levels. So there's a lot to learn from. So I would encourage people to see it as a learning experience and not as some kind of goal to go and conquer the first prize. And if not, it's a big failure. That's just not it.
Thank you. That's very good. That's exactly how I feel about it too. But do you remember or care to share what was your mindset going into an audition? Like when you were in fact stepping on stage and, sorry, I'll say that again. What was your mindset going into a competition when you were like an audition, stepping on stage and having to like concentrate that moment, and you knew you didn't have 40-minute recital to play, you just had maybe 15 minutes or so?
Well, for me specifically, the actual audition or the actual moment was never the problem. My problem was what happened before. I used to get so stressed out like before. And really sometimes I couldn't think about anything else. I was anxious for days and sometimes weeks before. But then when the moment came, I somehow, once I was on stage, it was okay. It was always of course, sometimes I played better than others, but all in all, like, I was focused. So I think it's a lot of mental preparation. Of course, every person reacts differently, but it's a lot of mental preparation. So I think once you're prepared in your head, of course, prepare the pieces properly, but also prepared in your head for what's going to happen. And you also remember that nothing is the end of the world, really.
Yeah.
That these performances are not the end of the world whatsoever. Okay, it's easier said than done. Back then I thought it's the end of the world. But like now I can say from perspective that it's not the end of the world.
Completely agree with you. Interesting thing that sets you apart from pretty much everybody else, because you have served in Israeli army.
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
Now, how was that? And did you learn anything that is applicable to your professional life? It doesn't have to be yes, it may be a no answer. But if yes, then what might that be that people like myself who haven't had that experience aren't aware of?
Well, first of all, just to clarify that I didn't go to any fighting units. I served as what is called like an outstanding musician, which is a program in that about 20 or 30 people get a year in Israel after they pass some certain exams of playing exams, and you basically serve as you don't go to the fighting units. You just serve, like in an office, or I served at the clinic for 3 years, and of course I did the basic training. So it wasn't a very So it it's a very Israeli experience in a way, like serving in the military for 3 years. It's just something that in Israel, the society expects you to do, to kind of give your part. I was gladly able to continue my, my piano playing, and I was also allowed to go out to play concerts outside of the country. Of course, I needed a lot of, approvals for this, but what do I take from there? It was honestly, I don't feel I learned a lot in this period. It was just something I had to get done. And you get to know, of course, people. I have friends that I met. Sure. And I learned how to shoot a gun, which is not something I want to ever do again. But really, no, I don't think this is a necessary experience at all. I think that probably people who actually serve, it's a necessary, don't get me wrong. Israel, unfortunately, does need a military service. But my specific service, it was some kind of, I wanted to give to the society. I didn't feel that my capabilities were really used in the military. I just did it because I had to do it, and my daily work was not very interesting there. But those who, of course, go and serve in other units, it may be a very, very meaningful experience that they have. I know of many, many friends of mine had very significant experiences in the military. For me, it wasn't, I must say.
There is no right or wrong answer. It's just a very interesting, different experience than most of us have. And I'm always terribly, terribly curious about it. What would you say is the top 3 things that you would have said to yourself at 20 as an artist, as a budding musician?
What would I say? That's
there's no wrong answer, but everybody likes stop something or other, so I figured, why not?
Well, so first of all, I would tell myself that the world is not waiting for you. For myself, I would say that, because back then I thought, I grew up like, kind of in Israel. I got a lot of recognition as a child, and things are kind of surrounded. And I think a lot of pianists have this experience that, they get a lot of appreciation as children, and then they go out to the big world and they see that the world is not just sitting and waiting for you, and that there's a lot of great people, and that you're, and so I would just say, first of all, I'd say it's not about me or about anybody. It's it's a huge world and everything. Second of all, I'd say chill. I was I had such a drive to, become a great pianist and have a big career and all that. I would say probably I would tell myself to relax a little bit. And what would be the third thing? I don't know. When you look at yourself in the past, you see a lot of things that you like and maybe have lost along the way, and some other things that you learned along the way. I think back then, I had even more energy than what I do now, which is people think I'm very energetic now. So
right. It's hard to believe.
A little bit hyperactive. Yeah, so I don't know. I think the 2 that I mentioned are probably the first 2, the major 2 things. I probably know that what we call a musical career, as I envision it back then, it's not really something that, first of all, it's not necessarily something that I discovered, that the dream of the career that I had back then was not for me, really. Only traveling around the world and being disconnected from people and playing 200 recitals a year. This is not really me. I enjoy playing recitals, but I like being around people and all that. So when I did have to do these kind of solo concert tours, in my 20s, I used to sometimes, just want some company. And so probably just say that maybe it's not exactly the path that I always dreamt of that was the right path for me.
Right. That's very meaningful. Now, another question I have for you is, everyone is talking about having a manager, and then everyone who has a manager, a lot of people say, well, I still have to go ahead and do everything myself. So where do you stand on that? And having so successfully managed in a way yourself, also, what would be your recommendation for young pianists and generally musicians who are, maybe even slightly preoccupied with the idea of getting a manager and then everything is going to somehow fall into place?
I would recommend for people to stay as open as possible and create, because at the end of the day, this world is it's a people's world. People are running everything, and you know, I always enjoyed making friends in places, and like but honest friendships, not like friendships of interest. It's not like, so if you're actually interested in what other people are doing, or you do want to make friends, and so at the end of the day, this is also will have, I believe it will have an effect professionally. And so it's always thinking outside of the box, always looking for answers for your own self. Like, what do I really want to do? Who is really me? What do I see myself? What are the ways that I'd like to, what are the steps that I would like to take in order to get to the places where I want? Like, what kind of culture fits me? What music is preferred? What do I think that is particularly close to my heart more than other things? Until you sort of define yourself. Now, it's not going to be easy, and you may not get exactly to the place that you wished for, but you certainly take control over your own life and not let life happen to you, if that makes sense.
Perfect sense. No, that's very good. Not let life happen to you. That's good. Yeah, you have to kind of make your own path. Now, another thing is, what would be your tip as a professional who played with so many orchestras as to how to put together the best performance of a concerto with the least rehearsal time? Because we all know sometimes the orchestras don't really want to rehearse piano concerto or violin concerto too much. They are more interested in rehearsing their symphony. So do you have like a particular beacons of that you check off on your list when you're going into that rehearsal and you may not have enough time?
Yeah, that's a very hard one. I remember that some years ago I had to, and another one, I had to study a new concerto, the Yellow River Concerto, which is super difficult. I had to study it in 3 weeks for a performance with the Beijing Symphony Orchestra in the Chinese Golden Week, or I don't remember what it was, and then of course like one rehearsal the same day, 2 hours before the concert. It was so very, very stressful.
Yeah.
So first of all, I would really recommend playing it a lot with second piano, running the concerto a lot, so you know exactly, because it sounds and feels totally different when you play it like by yourself and that. So just run it with second piano a million times before, and then like just that you're used to that, and always also envision in your heart, like even listen to the recordings, even with video, and see when is the clarinet playing, and when do you have to look at this, and when do you have to look at this, and try to be, and this is a thing that really experience is very important. You have to just be, to have as many performances as possible, then you just become better and better at it. And you will not be perfect right from the beginning. It will never be absolutely perfect, but you learn and you become better with time.
Do you have a take on whether like track the conductor out of a corner of your eye, or just believe they will look at you or feel your energy and just concentrate on yourself?
You always have to be in communication with a conductor.
Fair enough.
Of course, like you have to know when to look and when to concentrate. Of course, when you have a super difficult passage, like I'm doing in the beginning of the third movement of the Rachmaninoff second, I will not look at the conductor in this moment, okay? Because the orchestra is not playing and I have to hit all the notes. but you need to know where are the moments that are particularly tricky, for the orchestra, for the communication, that is very important. Yeah.
Would you ever conduct and play concerto yourself?
I studied conducting 1 year in this. I don't know. Never say never. Right now, it does not necessarily seem like the path that I'm taking, but who knows?
Do you compose?
I tried composing when I was 17. Nah.
You never say never.
Don't feel I was particularly successful at this.
Well, never say never. You were 17. Oh my gosh. Keep that door open.
Let's see.
Fitness. I know you're quite fit and interested in it. So what's your routine? What do you do? What do you recommend doing? What do you absolutely believe pianists shouldn't do?
This is of course very, very personal. I myself, in these Corona days, I run like at least twice a week, and then I do a program called Insanity Max 30. And it's this is a killer. It's only, you know, when I get too much body fat and I want to kind of lose some. But this is a lot of it's very intense, but it's I like it. You can do it from home, of course. But I used to play soccer. I'm a huge soccer fan. And I used to play, but here and there I still play soccer also.
I know that. That's why I'm driving at that. I mean, do you still play?
Here and there, I just actually earlier in the autumn, I played with a group here. I went every Tuesday, but it was very hard to keep because I was traveling so much. So, but I may actually resume it. Again, you have to be very careful of your hands, etc.
Right. That's the thing. Like I always thought boxing may not be the best sport for pianists, you know,
or tennis.
Yeah. Or tennis, because, you know, tennis elbow, you can get it in sort of like tendonitis, and one has to be careful.
Yeah.
Then grooming, personal grooming. Do you have like a absolute go-to? How do you go from zero to black tie or stage ready the shortest way?
I'm not sure I understood the question.
Do you have like a routine how to basically clean up nicely real fast so that you feel like, you know, you can go from being in your everyday look to stage ready super fast and easy?
I have a feeling that you're probably the better person to ask that than me. Not in particular. I have kind of my routine. I have my, you know, my suits, and I don't do anything special. I don't even put gel in, nothing. No makeup, no gel, no nothing. So,
well, you're a handsome fellow, so that work, you don't need much. But I'll tell you, wrinkle-free stuff really works, because when you travel, if you have wrinkle-free shirts or tux, then you don't have this problem of having to iron things when you get them out.
That's actually a very good point.
So I found in my experience, just having things that don't wrinkle, and you can roll them up and shove them in the bag, and then you take them out and they look really good. And everybody thinks, you know, you have an entourage of people helping you, and you really don't. And that's kind of a lifesaver sometimes. I had to change the airport bathroom once into a tux.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, and you're much more fashionable than me. So I think you should. This is people should ask you this question. This is for sure.
But I'm always curious, you know, how do my friends do that? Because at the end of the day, everybody looks very nice. You know, when we did gala for Cleveland piano competition in the fall, everyone looked fabulous. And, you know, everybody has their own way of sort of getting themselves together.
That's actually a very good question. And yeah, so I guess some people go to the dry cleaners, and some people, but this solution that you just said sounds like a good one.
Good. Okay. Take notice, everybody. Now, what do you listen to outside of classical music? Like, what's in your iPod when you go to the gym or when you go running, if at all?
I'm a huge fan of Radiohead.
Love them.
I can actually, yeah, it's like, but I'm on a freak level, kind of. I went to see them 10 times live in 8 different countries.
Oh my.
Yeah, I think for me, they're like the greatest music makers, like certainly in the last 20, 30 years. But yeah, so this is certainly very high up. And in general, I enjoy a lot of jazz music, a lot of rock music, some Israeli rock music. And then of course I listen to classical, I listen a lot, usually not to piano, but I listen to symphonies quite a lot, chamber music.
I know that you like and appreciate transcriptions. So you play some basically kind of popular music and jazz, and what is your experience of performing, as it were, quote unquote crossover, even though I hate that word, but you know, outside of classical music genre? So
yeah, I just think that it's a way to engage new audiences. Engaging audiences is something to classical music is something I'm very passionate about. And I think that using transcriptions for pieces that people may know, and still maintaining sort of like a high level of pianism. This is just a great way to introduce people to classical music. And I have a few versions, for example, Papa Nagila or Pulp Fiction. They're all like online.
I saw that. I love it. And like, I saw that.
So they work really well. The audience really enjoys them, regardless if they're like not audiences that like classical music. And combining it with some classical pieces in the concert, it always works well.
Absolutely.
And you make incredible transcriptions. When we were playing at the gala, you know, at the Piano Cleveland Gala in I think last October, we did a transcription of yours and you know, of Queen, and it was fabulous. People loved it. So you played also like the theme from Titanic. I mean,
my heart will go on.
It works. So and like how enjoyable that is for everybody, and primarily for yourself, I guess.
Oh, I believe. I mean, I really think that if it's done in the right way, you know, pianistically legitimate, that it, you know, is not just like a a cover of things. It's more than a cover of things. Then it's great. But I always ask my friends and colleagues about, because you know, some people are more sort of less comfortable with stepping outside of the genre. But I really personally, clearly like the idea of music at large as opposed to music segmented into things. Do you cook?
Yeah, I do now, because I have to. I usually don't like cooking. I don't like cooking for myself. So yeah, I enjoy cooking for, you know, when I'm with my girlfriend. She lives in another country, but or when I'm like for friends, etc. So then I cook. But for myself now, of course, yes.
Do you have a signature favorite dish to cook?
I'm super boring at this. I love schnitzel and mashed potatoes and matzo ball soup, like a good Jew.
That's good. It's delicious. I have to invite myself over next time I'm over. What's your favorite book?
100 Years of Solitude, Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Oh my God, I read it one summer. I love it too. What is the most surprising thing you've learned at your job right now as a president of Piano Cleveland?
The most surprising thing? Surprising thing. I will have to think about that. Most surprising thing.
Yeah, well, think about it. In the meantime, we have 7 o'clock, so all my neighbors are, you know, making a lot of greetings for the medical workers. So,
oh, that's great.
You know, there's a cacophony at 7 o'clock in New York City. I'm happy to say we can rival Italy and Spain with that. But I mean, there's always something surprising. Another thing I wanted to ask is, what the most unexpected benefit you experienced of speaking so many languages?
What the most unexpected benefit? I think just the way that the way you understand the culture is just like, it's not only about like communicating with people, but actually you understand people better this way. I mean, when you speak, and also you give I think you give a lot of people respect when you speak their language. Like if somebody who's not from Israel and not related to Israel spoke Hebrew to me, automatically I would admire the person, because Hebrew is a very non-useful language unless you're Israeli or like engaged with Israel in a certain way. So that would just like mean, wow, you made such an effort to study my tiny and unimportant language. Chapeau.
Wow, that's great. That's exactly what it is. Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
I hope to see myself happy.
Perfect answer. Where do you see Cleveland Piano Competition in 10 years?
Growing. The organization Piano Cleveland, I hope that it will continue to be and even more and more kind of a leading organization, an organization that always is you know, creative, always engaging, always taking care of musicians and taking care of its constituents, and creating exciting programming, building new friendships and new connections around the world.
That's perfect. That's exactly what I hope you'd say. And I know it's such a tedious question, but I gotta ask it. Do you have any practicing tips? Like, what do you do to ensure you're always in as an amazing shape as you are. And you are. So that's just an observable fact.
And any what tips? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Practicing tips.
Any
like
practicing? Oh,
practicing.
practicing tips. Well, I think that it's very, thanks for the nice words. First of all, I don't know if it's always true, but I say that I personally practice etudes and scales for an hour every morning. Not every morning, but let's say 5 times a week. I start with an hour, of like etudes and scales, sometimes with metronome, and starting very slow, then moving, and I have like my own technical. But I remember I was on the jury with Olga Kern, and she was like, before a performance, she was like playing like these fast scales, like wow. So every person has like every person has like his or her like way of maintaining in shape, but it's certainly we have to maintain this thing, and so this is what works for me.
No, that's why I'm asking, because it's very interesting. Are you a believer in practicing hands separately?
No.
Because I happen to do that quite a lot, because I feel like my brain somehow stores that information so well when I know like what one hand is doing at a time, and then combine them.
That's a very personal. This is one thing. I mean, for me it does not work this way. If it does for you or for somebody, great. People should find what people are different, and they memorize differently, and it's great that it works for you. For me, I usually practice both hands together.
How do you at all think and deal with memory and memory-related anxiety as it relates to performance?
Well, memory is somehow was never an issue for me. I never thought about that. It was never. I had other concerns and not memory really. Memory is kind of more for me. It's like listening. You have to listen and to kind of be involved in the music you're making, and then it will be fine.
Right. And what about anxiety?
Anxiety.
Or stage fright in vernacular.
This is an ongoing thing that I think we all deal with. It's there's like we just have to accept it that there are gonna be some days we're gonna feel good, some days we're gonna be frightened and be anxious, and some nights that even before like not that big, important performances we're gonna be all anxious, and that's kind of natural. And I think we just have to learn to deal with it.
Yeah. On a completely different note, how do you find time to have a meaningful personal relationship with your career going the way that it does, where you're a performer and you're a leader of internationally important and renowned organization, and you have a girlfriend? And how do you combine all that?
Well, first of all, I mean, we're specifically on a long distance relationship. So when we're together, so it's a little bit different, but she's also a very careeristic person, heading towards being a heart surgeon. So, a cardiac surgeon. So this is a very, very demanding thing too. At the end of the day, yeah, it's challenging, but in previous relationships, I can tell you that we managed somehow. It's you have to get used to this kind of having to travel sometimes, and that's not always easy. But at the end of the day, if you have trust and you love each other, so you even being together too much can sometimes be challenging. So I think like relationships are challenging anyway, right? So I mean, now people, when they have to be in the Corona days together for 2 months, and especially when they have children, some of my friends with children are going crazy,
Yeah.
So it's challenge. So I think relationships are challenging anyway, and I don't think that this dealing with a career is necessarily making it like more challenging. It may actually help even in certain things, give some kind of more space, and but whenever there is like whatever there needs to deal with, I mean, I think, yeah, it's inevitable. You have to deal with some things in the relationship whatsoever.
That makes perfect sense. Is there a country you hadn't been to that you would just love to go?
There are a few. South Africa, I haven't been to yet. I'd love to go there. I would love to visit more of the Arab world, but this is like somewhere that, I mean, I've been to Jordan and to Egypt, but and not to other countries because I'm Israeli and I can't go. I would have loved to go to Iran. Iran is not Arabic, it's Muslim, but of course I can't go there, but it would have been a very exciting experience. And where else would I say? I mean, there's specific places that I still want to go. I want to go to Tajikistan because they have like beautiful mountains there and beautiful scenery.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, we live in an ever-changing world, so everything is potentially possible. Fingers crossed.
Hopefully.
Then, oh, I just had, oh, I know, I had a question which I thought I forgot. What is the smartest and the dumbest thing you've ever done?
Wow. Ooh, that's
not necessarily in that order.
I have to think about. The smartest thing that wow.
Oh, there is no right or wrong.
The dumbest. Okay, I know what's the dumbest thing I ever done. I was on a trip on Honduras, and in Honduras by myself, and I decided to go climb a mountain in the afternoon with very little water, with shorts, without like anything, without telling anybody that I'm going, just going by myself on a mountain. I almost got lost on the top. It started getting dark and I was sure I'm going to get stuck there and I don't know what. Finally, and like it was with no trail, nothing, just climbing. That was very, very stupid. And I got all bruised and cut like on my way down. Somehow I managed to, anyway, it was a crazy story.
Good.
So that was probably the most stupid thing.
So do not climb mountains when in Honduras without telling people is what you're saying. Take more water, always water.
That's very, very stupid. The wisest thing that I've done. Wow, I don't know. It's really I have to think about it.
Yet to be determined.
Yet to be determined. I think. I would say that moving to China was an experience that it has not always been easy there, but it was like a sort of like a brave move that a lot of my personal friends questioned a lot, and my family, and I developed so much there and I learned so much with this experience that this is kind of a step that I'm proud of. So I would say, I don't know if to call it smart, but it is something that I'm happy that, you know, building something in a totally different culture, in a different language, and proving to myself that I can do it was probably like something I'm happy about.
That's terrific. That sounds like it's exactly what led you from one thing to the next, and it was the beginning of your path that landed you where you are.
Yeah, I would say so.
What would be the one thing advice you'd give to a music teacher?
To a music teacher? To find a good balance between pushing and not pushing too hard.
What would you say to a parent of a music student?
Same thing. Find the balance between pushing and not wanting to. I know so many people who are like, yeah, I just like the teacher, the teacher or the parent just ruined it for me. You know, like because they pushed too hard or they forced me and all that. That's not the way it's supposed to work.
What would you recommend to a young music student?
To a young music student to do it because he loves it and not for any other reason.
Brilliant. Well, I think we've covered it all. I'm just so glad that you took that time out of your life to spend with me on our inaugural podcast.
Well, that's a pleasure, and thanks so much, Konstantin. And really, it was we got to know each other actually pretty recently, only a few months ago, and it's become a great friendship. And you're doing wonderful things, and of course, we look forward to having you on the selection jury of Virtuoso. And I wish you all the best, in all your endeavors. And of course, with this podcast, I'm sure that that you'll have some interesting conversations.
Yes, this has been most wonderful, and I'm so looking forward to seeing you in Cleveland when finally all of this is over. But in the meantime, we will reconvene in virtuality. And
Absolutely.
thank you, Yaron. And everyone, thank you so much for joining us, my friend and colleague Yaron Kohlberg, on Creative by Konstantin podcast. Like us, subscribe to us, and you'll hear many more great stories. Ciao.